without further ado, we're going to get kicked off here. I want to just start by having each of you go around and take a minute or two to introduce yourselves, because I think outside of Nathan, Thiago, you're kind of a hidden gem here, and Josh, you've obviously been tied into this community via coming here so often, but a lot of the startup community doesn't know you. So maybe if you wouldn't mind just getting us kicked off.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. My name's Josh Brewer. My career has been primarily in design. Closer? There we go.
There you go.
Much better. Use the deep voice.
This is why you don't give me microphones. But started in design. I was really fortunate. I moved to the Bay Area in 2009 with a company called Socialcast. Not too long after that,
there you go.
My
Just on the
chin.
chin.
All right. Not too long after that, I found my way to a small little startup called Twitter, where I was really fortunate to be in the principal designer role early on. So the 3 years that I was there, we went from 200 to 2,000 people on the team. And that was an unimaginable scaling experience and opportunity. Set me up in a lot of ways for what followed in the next decade. I left Twitter, I started an incubator, spun a couple companies out of there, one of which I co-founded and became the CEO. It was called Abstract. It was like a GitHub for designers. It's the best way to think about it. And then we grew that, did the VC dance, and eventually sold part of the company to Adobe and another part of it to a private equity firm. Since then, I've been coaching and advising founders and CEOs. The previous talk that we just had, mental health stuff, man, so much appreciation for that being a part of the conversation here. And just excited to be here and supporting everything happening in Honolulu Tech Week.
Thank you. Nathan, I'll let you go. You're good.
All right, we'll see. It's on.
So the key with the mics, you just put the mic like against your chin. Don't worry, we sanitize them in between.
Yeah, it's actually one of the things you practice in running a company is you give talks. So I got the mic. Yeah, I kind of fell into starting a company. Didn't really know much about it. I met someone, and he and I started a consulting company together. That was really just a lesson in how not to run out of money. There's no venture backing. We paid our employees, and our customers paid us, and had to skip payroll for ourselves a couple of times to make sure we could pay our team. It worked out. It sort of ended unceremoniously. There was the financial market meltdown. All our customers were financial institutions. We survived, but much smaller. And then we transitioned into a software company. We built that, went through Y Combinator, so one of the accelerators based out of San Francisco. That was doing everything wrong, raising money, and then eventually getting it right. And then we sold to private equity in 2019. And now I get a little more flexibility in my schedule. I help some founders that I know. I'm some kind of acting CFO for a friend of mine's company, but that's just a fancy way of saying I make sure the bills get paid.
Thiago.
Hi. First, thank you very much for the invitation, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. Very excited. And so from my accent, you probably know that I'm not from the US, right? But I'm Brazilian, born and raised there. And I actually founded a company there in 2012 that was the first fintech. There was just nothing around fintech back then. And we created, you can think of as a bank without being a bank. It was a consumer app where you could have all your finances in one single place. There was a financial marketplace. You could see your credit score. You could get loans, investment products, insurance, make P2P payments. In the end, the idea of not being a bank was because we didn't want to be regulated, but the central bank came and regulated everything that we were doing, including creating a framework for what we call there in Brazil open banking. It started in the UK. Actually, in the US, it will probably be implemented by the Fed. But anyhow, and I ended up helping the central bank create the open banking standards in Brazil, which basically means that every single bank there in Brazil has to open up their APIs in a standard fashion, both for data and for transactions as well, including payments, auto data, debit, and all that. In 2021, I sold the company to the largest conglomerate in Brazil. They also had a bank there. Had 2 years earnout, which ended in last year, July 21st. July 20th, I was actually on a plane already towards Honolulu. And I moved here with my family, and I've been enjoying tremendously living here. So no plans on leaving anytime soon.
We did a lot to get you here, and we're going to do everything to keep you. We're calling Hawaiian Airlines. There's no way you're getting out.
Yeah, and I met Michael through, so my founder, there were two founders, myself and another founder, who actually met Michael in Brazil when he lived there in Brazil. And they were buddies. The other founder of Guiabolso was an American. And so he introduced me, when he knew that I was moving here to Hawaii, introduced me to Michael before I actually came here. So Michael helped us prepare and understand the lay of the land.
We're happy that you're here.
Thank you.
So I think I want to begin, again, with this theme of kind of setting the stage for either starting or building a company and setting oneself up for immediate success. I think one of the big problems that I've at least seen, and I got caught up in this culture when I was living up in the Bay Area, is this whole almost like romanticized tech crunch, Silicon Valley culture that we see about like this big idea, and then it's like frictionless, and then we're at 1 million users and all the VCs are knocking down on our door. But the reality is that companies and even founding ideas, I think, are a lot more complex. They don't just arrive in a flash of brilliance typically. I would be curious to just do a little bit of a rapid fire approach of like, for Abstract, for Simple Legal, for Guiabolso, can you share a little bit about the founding story of each, whether it be meeting your co-founder, Ben, and how you kind of transitioned from what you did prior into that founding idea? Maybe Thiago, start with you.
Sure. Well, first we have to remind that Brazil is a very different ecosystem. It was basically non-existent. Like, you didn't have not even fintechs, but mostly startups. There were just almost none. VCs, there were only actually 2 VCs in Brazil, Brazilian VCs, and some foreign VCs would come and go depending on how hot Brazil was. So I basically left. I was working at McKinsey. I left McKinsey. I was focused on financial services. I left because I wanted to create something. I didn't know what I was going to create. And I had a very good friend that I met at McKinsey, but he was already gone. He was working at Groupon, which was Ben. And we worked very well at McKinsey. We were friends. We had a lot of fun together. He was more extroverted. I'm very introverted. More on the analytical side, is more on the relationship side. And we were like, let's do something together. We don't know what it is, but let's do something together. So I left McKinsey, he left Groupon, and we started exploring ideas. Like, we had like even an idea of creating an e-commerce for furniture. It was just like all over the place. And in the end, we settled in things that we knew the best. So I was working already with financial services, helping at McKinsey, helping big banks. So it was mostly that. We first, on the funding side, we first bootstrapped the company. Then we raised a small amount, a seed amount, with a client, with someone that was a client of mine at McKinsey. It was one of the largest media conglomerates in Brazil. They didn't have a VC arm. They just funded through their newspapers. They funded us, just kind of a crazy. Later on, they actually created a VC arm. And we didn't have much traction, but we were able to attract the founders of Mercado Libre, which is kind of the Amazon in Brazil, a very well-run company. They have a VC fund, Kazakh, which is the main fund of the region. when we attracted them, it was because of the technology. So we created, I don't know if you guys here are familiar with Plaid. Have you heard about Plaid?
Plaid.
Yeah. So they do the account aggregation. Plaid, yeah. They do the account aggregation. They were sold for $10 billion for Visa, but the FTC here blocked. They're now valued at 15. I met them when they were only 9 people, actually, in San Francisco. So we were a little bit later, and we created initially the same technology that Plaid created, we created for Brazil, but instead of selling that to third parties, we just decided, let's keep this to ourselves and create a full stack of consumer products on top of it. And we had that tech, so that attracted one of the VCs, but didn't have a lot of traction, so it was a hard round. But then we launched the app, and then it's kind of the glamorous story. We launched the app like blew up. We were like bigger than Tinder when Tinder was huge in Brazil. We were like first on the App Store many times. And then there were a lot of VCs, and that's when we attracted Ribbit, the main fintech VC here from the Bay Area, to lead our following round. So that was, but then things became harder when the central bank decided to regulate. But we can leave that for another part of the story.
But I think it's really, a couple things that I've just drawn from your story over the years is that, you and Ben were both considered essentially global experts in that area, or at least the experts in Brazil. You had set yourself up to sufficiently bootstrap the company early on, so we weren't reliant from day one on finding funding before you built anything. And you set yourself up with the right partners, right, in country. We'll come back to kind of, I think, continue genesis on this story. I think the other thing there is maybe, would you mind taking actually another minute really quickly and talking about that relationship with Ben? Because the co-founder relationship is so critical early on. And I think that is one of the other things that you guys were so lockstep from day one.
Yeah. So it started with a partnership, right? So that's what I tell everybody. It didn't start as a company. It didn't start with a product, with an idea, with a specific thing. We just said, like, we want to create something together, period. And that's because we already had experienced working together. The last project that we did in McKinsey was amazing. It was actually like unheard of inside McKinsey, because we finished the project like in 1/3 of the time that they had projected. And the client was like really happy. Everybody was happy, and we just worked very well together. And we partied a lot before I got married, of course. Later on, he got married, which was actually interesting because we founded the company. I was already married. He was single. He was partying a lot.
He was partying with me.
Yeah, I was partying with you, actually. And I'm like, wow, we need to work, man. But it all worked.
Thank you. Yeah, and Nathan, I think would love to hear you talk a little bit more from the simple legal side, because as you were explaining, this is something you started out bootstrapped at first and ran it as an actual business before really deciding to scale up. I think a lot of people, again, they tend to rush towards raising a lot of money, get themselves in trouble before really validating the technology and product and demand for it. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that story, and then also the inflection point of deciding, hey, we are gonna go, I know you switched to more software, but that's a very common thing, is start with consulting or services and then move into software. Can you talk a little bit deeper in your journey and that inflection point?
Yeah, so we were a consulting company, and then to make the switch into software, we actually shut down the consulting company. We sold it off to the clients. So they picked up all of our people, and then we went into software. And I think the key to being able to do that, and the key to being able to start by not taking outside money, you might think it's, well, be rich, and then you can not take outside money. Like, that would probably work. I wouldn't know. The key is actually don't spend a lot. right? And so when we started, so Simple Legal was the software company. When we started that, we paid ourselves minimum wage, and which is not enough for, in my case, a family of 4, and my co-founder also was a family of 4. Not enough to live on, but personally, we didn't spend a whole lot of money either, and so that helped out a lot. Like that's really the key. It takes a lot. It dials back a lot of the stress, because every financial obligation you create for yourself, it just stacks on top of the next one. And whether it stacks on top of it, like it's an actual, a car payment or some other financial outlay, it might just be your own psyche, right? Oh, like, well, I can only fly economy plus. I can't fly regular economy. And so it's hard to come back. It's a lot easier to spend more money. It's hard to decide to spend less money. And so we were both, I think it's one of the keys with a good founding relationship is that you're on the same wavelength as your co-founder. Whether one of you is at home with the family and the other one is out partying and you need to work, one of you likes to spend a lot, you got to spend money to make money, and the other one's like, no, we got to save money so that we have, we can be this thing that can't be killed. You want to have that same wavelength. And so my co-founder and I, we worked together for close to 10 years before we started a business together. And then we ran that together successfully for quite some time before we started the software company.
And do you feel that, like, when you were moving into the software company, that it was like the kind of that's a big switch, right? Obviously, you're able to sell off the consulting business, but you were starting something from new there. What was what was that impetus to really move into software?
Well, it was fairly easy because the consulting business was failing.
Yeah.
So, and when I say we sold it off, what I mean is our clients basically paid us maybe half of what they would have paid a recruiter to hire our people from us.
Gotcha.
So I can tell the story the glamorous way. We sold a couple businesses, right? Yeah.
Well, that's like the hidden secret that I think people don't know is whenever we're like, oh yeah, I was an early employee at the company we sold. There's not a dollar amount on it. Yeah. Don't believe it. It's not as glamorous. If the dollar amount is not published in the news, it's not as glamorous as you think. Josh, I think for you, one of the things, and we've known each other for forever, but similar, I think, to both Thiago and Nathan, is that you had this deep area of expertise, right? You're on the stage at the conferences, you knew everyone in the design world, and then you ended up building this product like that designers needed and loved. Would you talk a little bit more about kind of how you went through that process of de-risking it? You used a venture, this incubator venture studio. You also shared a little bit with me about how you had all this pent-up demand already. That seems like a pretty good idea for people to have in place, right? Can you speak a little bit on that transition?
Yeah, so the idea was something that while we were trying to scale our design team at Twitter, we were trying to solve these problems of, and without, I'm trying to keep this one short. No, design files, especially 10, 15 years ago, were usually Photoshop. Photoshop is a binary file. If you know anything about that, it's impossible to know what actually changed inside of that file. So we worked with our amazing engineering counterparts who had things like Git, and they had like atomic granular level changes. So they knew exactly what changed. Everyone could see what was going on. Design was like this black box. Nobody knew what changed. Everybody thought it was magic. Designers were also kind of precious and hid their stuff. So I built a tool internally at Twitter to make it a lot easier for design to at least like version the work they were doing and then make it available to the rest of the company to see and like follow along in real time. And it transformed the way that our product design and engineering teams worked together. When I left Twitter, someone suggested, you're leaving to go build that, right? And I said, well, no, because we still don't know what changed. Yeah. And so I completely shelved the idea, started an incubator, built a bunch of other things. And it was only when my co-founder came in, who I'd known for a while, actually tried to acquire his company at Twitter and get him, inside there. But fast forward, he joined me at the incubator, and he asked me a question one day. It was like, why don't designers have like more of a tool and a workflow like engineers do? And I was like, oh, let me tell you. So I got on my soapbox, And the core of it was this technological block.
Yep.
I would have built the company absolutely, like right after leaving Twitter, but I just didn't think it was possible. He came back 2 weeks later with a working prototype. He had reverse engineered the binary file into a structured JSON data format that we could finally reason about. And I looked at him and was like, do you want to start a company? And do you want to go raise money? Because this is what was necessary to build a system of record for design. And for venture capitalists, if you say system of record and then put anything after it, they pay attention because it's data, and data is extremely valuable. The demand piece of this was, I was very fortunate. I had recruited in some really talented folks. And so when we kind of put up this very cryptic website that was like, here's this handful of people that you kind of know who are working on some stuff for you, it got the community really excited, even though we were not explicit at all about what we were doing. They were just like, if these folks are thinking about it, we're in. And so we took advantage of the community that a number of us had built through our careers. And that created this private alpha wait list that was about 8,000 people signed up for that thing, and we're like, knocking on the door, please, whatever you're building, let me get my hands on it. And so we used that to our advantage to rapidly iterate what we were productizing, and we had the Microsoft Office team using our product without anyone at Microsoft knowing that they were using it. Because it allowed them to do something that they couldn't do before, and the speed at which they were moving was incredible. So we had a lot of folks like that, and the value of having a community that is already kind of bought in and is invested in the success of the thing because they know that it's going to benefit them was a huge unlock for us.
In Nikita terms, latent demand.
Latent, yes.
Yeah, super important. Super, super important. So we covered here, I mean, the key things that I'm pulling out really are like, obviously, and these are fundamentals, right? Great co-founding team. I think one of the questions that VCs will always tend to ask is like, why are you the person in this world that can make this happen? Knowing the problem set really, really deep, having that latent demand built up. Now, I think we're lucky to have you folks. We don't get, I think, this caliber of talent here as much on stage in Hawaii, and this is part of why we built Honolulu Tech Week. Would love to just hear your folks' general thoughts on moving in from your careers into the Hawaii scene overall, and maybe doesn't have to be specific for the Hawaii scene, but like, how would you walk through some of the newer founders that we have in the crowd on just general kind of best practices for de-risking their startup? I know it's caveated with, it's always specific, but when you walk through and you think about things like team, traction, how if you had to kind of give your practical advice for people at a high level and you were building now, what are kind of the things that you would look at that checklist for yourself when de-risking? This is where everyone pulls out their pens and pads.
So I think there's a couple of things. I think first, risk is the wrong way to think about it, because outside of a couple of things that you could start, you're not going to die, right? Like you're going to work on something and it might not work out, but you're not going to die. So there's not really risk as compared to like getting a job that the company might shut down. I have a friend here who's, he's doing well now, but he worked for a company that was based, I think they were mainland based, they might have been European, but they shut down the Hawaii office. And so through no fault of his own, very skilled person, it's just like, oh, we're not going to do the work here anymore. And so there's not risk in that same sense. I think we get trained to think that, like, oh, a startup, it's risky. Like, is it risky? Like follow that line of thought, like all the way down. Like it might not work. Like, okay, well, I'll get a job. That might not work out. I might quit. I might get fired, whatever. So first, I wouldn't think about it as risk, right? If we think about, all right, well, I want to achieve a certain goal and I might achieve it or I might not. all right, how do I make sure that I'm on the right path? When we started our company, I sat down on the floor in a Las Vegas conference room, so that was disgusting, and just sketched out this idea because there was this really cool presentation, and I just sketched it out, and we launched the company around that. And kind of one thin piece of it is in the product and became the right thing, but we had a ton of time in the industry, so we knew who all the big players were that used the kind of software we wanted, and we believed we could make something better and that more companies could use. And so if you have really deep expertise in an area, and that could mean a lot of years, but probably it doesn't mean that. Probably it means you've just thought about it at a way more detailed level and just way more insanely than anyone else. Being able to turn a binary file into actual that's nuts. That's amazing. No one thinks that deep into something. So if you want to de-risk or push for, increase the odds that you've got the right path to success, just get really, really deep, insanely deep into some area that you then know more about than anyone else.
But what if they don't like my idea?
Well, so no one's gonna like your idea, right? Now maybe the design idea was different, but your idea
aside from your friends and family, right? They will love it because they usually won't tell you.
Well, I think really quick, the reason why I asked that is I think a lot of people have great ideas in their head, and they can go so far down that rabbit hole of I've thought through everything, and they take it out and it's okay, problem 1, problem 2, problem 3 that pops up that we miss by getting high on our own supply, for lack of better words.
Yeah, so you might think you have a good idea, and that's a good start. So what you really have is the first bad idea. And then you need to get it in front of customers, and then they'll tell you why it's bad. And the worst thing that can happen is that someone's oh, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. And they yeah you to death, right? And you're oh, it's cool, awesome. Can you give me your credit card? And well, no, not for me, but the other people would do it. That's just, they're just leading you into a trap. But yeah, your idea will be bad, and that's okay. You're in the neighborhood of a good idea, and customers will help you find it.
Sounds like, did you go through YC or something? That sounds like...
Yeah, YC is it's what, I forget exactly what it is, but it's eat, sleep, write code, talk to customers, and exercise. Those are the 5 things you can do. And do those 5 things, and you'll find your way. And talking to customers is the most important one.
Thiago, you want to take a stab at the?
Yeah, I think I don't know if I'm going to add something, but it was just more on my personal experience regarding how you start and think about things. So the first one was the motivation and around the risk. I remember the day that I decided to leave McKinsey and create a company was having breakfast with my wife, and I thought, when I'm 70 years old, and I look back, I would deeply regret if I haven't tried, even if I failed. So that's the key thing. Even if I failed, I can go there, try something. I failed, yeah, but at least I tried. So when you release yourself from that fear of failure, it's just yeah, there's nothing else I can do aside from starting a company. So that was very liberating. And then instead of looking into what is the idea or the solution or the product, is just be very passionate about the problem that you're trying to solve and deeply understand, which just goes back to that. It's just talk to customers, but deeply understand what you're trying to solve. And I don't know if I think in your case, it's similar to mine. I don't know specifically your case, but then develops a tech that is very unique and very defensible, very distinguishable. So in our case, for example, the account aggregation, we had to reverse engineer the bank apps. It was very somewhat similar. The APIs from I'd put a sniffer on it. Just I won't go through the technical details, but we basically didn't have any competitor for 5 years. No one. There's no one. Even like there were some attempts, but it was they didn't have the right technical solution, so the banks would block their access, and that was it. So finding that like very specific technical angle, or like where you really solve that problem in a way that nobody has ever figured out. I think it's the magic behind the product in the end that you're going to build on top of that.
How about you? You want to go talk a little bit about?
Yeah. There's a couple things that come into mind for me. Rattle them off real quickly. The first one, I think, is around talent. So starting with Cofounder, and we've all shared about that, I think that's critical. That's like foundational, that there's trust and psychological safety in the relationship, that there is the ability to have conflict without ruining things. Disagree and commit is a fantastic mindset for that. Rate of iteration is a thing that I think about a lot when I'm talking with founders. How quickly can you test your assumptions? And if you and your co-founder and arguably your early team are wired towards this idea of we don't know what we don't know, and the only way we'll figure it out is to build it. And sometimes building it is a PowerPoint. Sometimes it's just a mock-up, or it's a paper prototype. Sometimes it's working code. Like I'm not trying to be specific about it, but it's all about how quickly can we learn. Speaking with customers is invaluable. They're not going to tell you what to do. Or actually, they probably will. They'll tell you exactly what to do. Your job is to not listen to them at that level and to go deeper and understand the problem, the pain that they are currently dealing with. There is something, there's either a gap, there's a real pain or inefficiency, but something is underneath whatever the thing that they're saying to you. There's something deeper under there. And so however you can put things in front of them, get them to respond and give you data back, that's, to me, one of the best things we did. We put intercom inside of our product when we were first building it. So literally our earliest testers were messaging us in real time when things broke. And our engineering team was trying to write code, but also doing support at the same time. But the whole company knew exactly what was going on. We knew, oh, okay, that's not going to work. We have to fix this. That's fine. We can actually get a long way down the road without even messing with this again, right? And so that's a huge piece of it. And there was one more, and I forgot.
We can come back to it. So we have around 20 more minutes. I want to do split into two parts. I want to leave around 10 minutes open for Q&A at the end if you folks are open to it. We don't have anything directly after. We do have Red Bull coming in the house and getting everyone energized. Mahalo Red Bull. But so we can run a little bit over, but Thiago, we got to get you home. I think the interesting thing is you folks obviously have all exited companies or are either taking time or working on things in the in-between, Nathan, like you were alluding to. But all three of you didn't build your companies here, right? You built them outside, but you're all uber talented tier 1 founders. Now, if you were building here in Hawaii and starting the next thing from here, can you just give me maybe your overview of the landscape here? Because I think you all at least have a little bit of insight into it. And maybe let's just start there. And then I have a follow-up question to this. What are your thoughts here, Thiago? You've been here for more than a year now. I know that you meet with people all the time. What is your thinking? Like, how would you grade, and you can be honest, like how would you grade the ecosystem?
Being very candid here, I actually don't know the ecosystem that well. I've been in Kailua, like tucked in my house, taking care of my kids for most of the time, which was the idea for at least 2 years, just to be with the family back again, because I was just working all day. But currently my thinking is of actually not starting anything, which I actually came back to the same question and changed it slightly right now, and I have a different answer, which is when I'm 7 years old and if I create another company and it's very successful, will I be happier than not creating? And I think I will be happier not creating. At least that's my current answer for that. So I'm not thinking specifically about that for now, although the first year was filled with anxiety because of AI, and I was just like, I'm missing the biggest wave ever. Although I'm in front of a lot of waves, literal, but anyhow, so, and my thinking is, there is remote work, which is a reality. So there is a time zone issue. At the same time, Hawaii is very attractive. Like if you want to bring people over, at least that's my imagination.
We got you.
Yeah, I can definitely hire a lot of people from Brazil that will still work from Brazil. So I would try to do something global with Brazilian talent and a mixture of people from anywhere that wants to move over here. I did some experiments, some tech experiments, and the way I approached talent was just, let me try to find the best person in the world in this specific, for example, I was looking at music, so I wanted someone that was good in DSP, digital signal processing. And I was like, let me search talent around the world. Let me just forget that there are any borders. So I think in that sense, that works for Hawaii as well, right? Because you're just thinking outside and just, you're here, but it doesn't matter where you are in the end. That's the way I've been thinking lately.
And in this case, it doesn't matter where the employees are. If you're here, they can be elsewhere.
Yeah, of course, yes. And although you have to find a space, the caveat for that is that imagine that you create a company. Your company's name is A, and then you have a competitor, which is B, and they're trying to do the exact same thing. They're all in office in the Bay Area. It might be an issue unless you have a very strong culture and you're hiring globally, because then you can actually be very, very well.
Yeah.
If you're like, okay, forget geography, I'm going to hire the best people ever, and make sure they're working like crazy, because it's competition in the end, right? And you got to outcompete the others.
So I think there's actually some amazing talent here, and if you want to see the best example of people that have recruited some of the best and smartest engineering, building, software talent on the island, or anywhere for that matter, they're actually hosting the Pauhana, I don't know if it's Wednesday or Thursday, but Normal Labs out in Kailua.
Yep.
So Ashton's helping there.
Plug Thursday from 5 to 7 p.m. in Kailua.
Thursday, 5 to 7. If you want to see people that have hired the best talent around that I have seen anywhere, I mean, when I see what this company does, the speed of iteration, which is the most important thing, this company is amazing. So it's, Thursday, Pauhana, it's out in Kailua. You can, I think you have the same problem that you have everywhere when you're looking at talent is this idea of vision and scale, right? Everywhere has this like some local area around them, and that's how far a lot of people can see. And then one of the things that I think Silicon Valley has done really well at, and I think they get a lot of crap for it too, like as they should, because some of it's a little weird, but like everything exists for two reasons. Somebody wanted it to exist, and they put in the work to make it happen. That's it. Everything. This building, the ships out in the harbor itself. Everything. Two reasons. Somebody wanted it, and someone put in the work to make it happen. If you can get that vision, which is not hard, into like college kids' heads, right? Because of course they think they can do everything, right? You have the same. It's the same thing, right? My VP of engineering that ran a good chunk of my company, he's from here. right? He had to move to the mainland. Like he graduated UH. He was an engineer. He did that, and he didn't move till he was about 31. My neighbors across the street, they both played baseball at Kamehameha. One of them's now a junior at UCLA, and the other one's is senior year at Kamehameha. Their father is a good friend of mine. He says Hawaii is a great place to grow up, a great place to grow old, and it's really hard in the middle. Right? So it's not a talent problem, a talent shortage. It's I think it's people here that can start companies that can take that time in the middle and take all those motivated, smart, amazing people and give them something here at home, right? And if you can't find it, then like people here, right? You create it. And so I don't think there is this. I appreciate the compliment, but I don't. Second-rate founder at best, but. I think that there's amazing stuff going on here. Like, come to the thing on Thursday. Like, what these guys are building, it's just like, it's amazing. Like, they're tackling an industry that hasn't changed in 100 years. And they're like, you know what? What if we learned more about this than anyone else, and then we did it better than everyone else? And they're doing it here.
Josh, we'll hop to you in a second, and they do have a cap, and I think that they're going to be doing a tour. That's a really cool thing that Ashton and Normal are. It's for those of you who can't make it out to Kailua, we also are having a panel here on talent with the big focus of recruiting that talent back home. I know one of the things that gets me so excited is there are a lot of smart people. You don't sell yourself too short. We have a lot of people like Kevin right here in the audience who spent a decade in the Bay Area, around a decade. Kevin Mackay from Hohonu. A lot of incredible people coming back that did their a tour for 5 to 10 years, learned how to build, learn how to scale out these companies and products that we all use. They're coming back home for family predominantly and to live here, but are keeping all those ties. I think that's what makes me more bullish on everything, and Shanoa said it so well last night, right? Like, the capital and all that stuff will follow the compelling people and the compelling companies.
Well, it's the density, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's, even for the topic of this discussion, right, validating your first idea, it's hard to do that in a vacuum. It's hard to do that alone. I mean, I heard you earlier, man, like, it's lonely. It is, right? So get yourself into this kind of density of other people, and like you will find like your peers. And so that's a way to have people around you where you're like, I have this crazy idea, and if you're in a group of people that are like, that's not so crazy, right? Then you're in the right place, and then you're in the right place to like validate your ideas and find the talent and hire the people. It is the thing that if you look at the Bay Area, you have a couple of very large universities and a massive amount of defense spending that all happened in one place for a very concentrated period of time, and it created that density, right? If you're in New York, you have density of finance people. If you're in the Bay Area, you have density of tech people. We have that density here in events like this. We have UH, we have various things, and so it's that density that's the key. And I think I think Hawaii has a lot of advantages to have it. Some disadvantages. Time change is hard, especially in the summer when you're 3 hours different from California and 6 from New York. It's tough. But thanks to Michael, thanks to other people, we get some of that density right here.
Josh, any thoughts on building and from here?
Definitely. So not from here, but have had family here for a long time, been good friends with a lot of folks here. Have had other entrepreneurs I've known through my journey who came out of Hawaii, went to this. So this is it's a well-worn path at this point. As I was listening, one of the things that struck me, I spent a decent chunk of time in my early career in San Diego, and there was a tiny little community. There was a scene there, some really talented developers, some folks building on the web in the early odds. And eventually everybody moved to San Francisco, including me, right? So it was this really, but when I looked back on it, it was that density. There were a handful of groups that constantly we're talking maybe weekly, if not bi-weekly, there was something that you were going to with other people that were as curious and slightly
Crazy?
crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah, I don't like that word, but adventurous. How's that? Yeah, I like that. And it was. So I just really want to reinforce that notion of like finds like. Yeah. And the more you can bring that together, the more that starts to build that concentration. The other piece for me is something that I want to go back to last night with the mayor. And this idea that there's an opportunity to not only revitalize, but like almost radically shift the way that technology impacts this community. And I'm thinking to myself, if I'm a founder and there's a problem locally for me and I can figure out a way to solve this, there's a very real chance that there are cities all around the country that are also facing similar challenges. And so it was one of the first times that I think I like had a little unlock like that, but it was like, okay, well, solve it here, you can solve it almost anywhere. And so I don't know, there was a moment of like optimism that the problems that y'all are facing here, while they are unique to this geographic location, are probably you can generalize them out, especially in product offerings and really offering solutions to folks. So I'm more excited than I have been for a while, and I do think that the remote world that we live in is really an opportunity. There's a lot of really interesting tech happening in Australia. Obviously, Southeast Asia has a ton going on. You have the entire West Coast, and so I think, well, the East Coast during this time period is you're right, it is a bit brutal. But there is a tremendous amount of opportunity for Hawaii to really play a role in that remote world.
Yeah, and if I make some parallel to Brazil, right? Like I said, there was no ecosystem there, like nothing. And what happened, and now there is like, you have like proper VCs, a lot of talent, a lot of startups, a lot of them did IPOs. What happened was just one company after the other and the other and the other, and it just becomes this virtual cycle where you have successful companies. People are saying that, well, there are some successful companies here. Let me join this company. Let me move to tech and work in tech. Well, let me found a company because I've looking at all these successful companies. I want to mirror myself. So in the end, there is the talent, like you said, but I think you need the supply, right? The demand for that talent, which comes naturally as soon as you start having really good success stories. So you need a handful of them. It's not that more of like really, really successful stories.
And I think one of the things that we definitely want to do here is we're going to show that we have had an IPO from here. I think we have a couple of companies in the pipeline that do have the potential to take off. Shameless plug for 5 p.m. Panel here on scaling a global success. So we have a couple interesting founders and funds that are going to be talking about their journey. If I can get your permission to get another 10 minutes of your folks' time, we'll make sure to get you out. I want to do one really quick rapid fire question with you folks, and we'll open it up to Q&A. On the Q&A, my ask just do a quick intro and then question. So we can get a couple in and we have time for the entire, at least a handful of people ask questions. My rapid fire question is going to be, what's one crazy idea you have to dramatically increase the probability of success for either a Hawaii startup or Hawaii ecosystem? And this can range from build this company to something broader. I'll go first to lead off by example. I think that we should figure out a way to have like a Hawaii house in San Francisco, so when founders need to go up there and take trips and do their meetings, that they don't have to go through all, the problem that we know of booking an SF. Like that's something that I want to talk with if anyone wants to talk about figuring out a way to do that. Because I think it would be a huge help to just be able for people to fly up there a weekend and maybe we even have, a monthly Hawaii party up there or something. Like that's one example probably really stupid, but something that could change and wouldn't take a lot of work?
I'm going to build on that because I think you called it Hawaii House, but I think about Soho House, London, New York. There's a bunch of places, and entrepreneurs I know that visit these. Part of the reason is they know what they're going to get when they get there. They know the quality of the people. They know the kind of like environment, and so there's something about not only a Hawaii House in San Francisco, but one here. So folks are, so you start building this bi-directional idea of like, hey, well, why don't you come?
That's called my house.
Fair play. But even wherever else there are like these deep pockets or concentrations of, native Hawaiians out there, and it could be LA, it could be Brazil, but wherever there are these places, I think there's something to that in establishing those bi-directional connections.
Awesome.
I tend not to believe in like sort of one way to make things happen. It's generally like
crazy ideas. Fine.
Yeah, it's generally like work harder.
Yes.
I think that making that connection, right? Like if you're not in the kind of density of startups, I don't know if it's like field trips, but finding the company that is similar to yours. Silicon Valley as a mindset, not a geography, is like paying it forward. I have customers that I tell, like, I can't help, like, if you need help from me, I'm happy to help you, but like, you're clearly more connected than I am, so I'm just gonna help as many other people as I can until I feel like I've made it up to you. And so if we had, visits, like, we should go visit YC. Like they'll take, you come there with 15, 20 founders, sit through one of their dinners, be weird, but then find the people that make you feel normal. And so that would be like that field trip to YC. That would be my one simple way to add 1% to our chance of success.
Yeah, this is one of the cool things that Shinoa did. It wasn't YC, but it was to bring their people up to 500 startups. So it was such a brilliant thing to do. Thiago, you want to take a crack?
Yeah, so I would go back to the idea of how you make sure you have like really successful companies here. That means companies that have already passed the 0 to 1 phase and are scaling up. So maybe having a network of and making sure these founders are helping each other, you're talking to, but I would try to do, in Brazil you have, actually it's global, even here in the US you have Endeavor. I don't know if you guys heard of the...
That's Brian's firm, or is that?
No. Endeavor is Linda. We can actually talk offline because maybe it makes sense to have something about Endeavor here in Hawaii because the idea was let's help all the entrepreneurs, and they came to the conclusion, well, let's help high impact entrepreneurs. It wasn't a popular idea, but that made a huge difference on the ecosystem there. Just making sure that these guys were really successful. Because then you have examples, everybody and they're able to help others. So it becomes kind of you reach escape velocity, right? That's what you want to help these companies achieve.
So I think just in summary, before we hop in a quick Q&A, and we'll do maybe 3 questions from the audience so we get out of here in time, or Thiago, that you get back to the kids and Danny doesn't call me from London, from Europe, excuse me, is one is obviously co-founder relationships and choosing incredible co-founders. I think 2 is really, really validating that customer demand, looking for pockets, right? Another thing, staying alive, just surviving long enough to make it through. Having some sort of true technical breakthrough and innovation. What else am I missing? I mean, we hit on a lot of stuff today, but I think it comes back to the fundamentals, right?
Well, it's talk to customers and then iterate. The faster you can change your idea, there's 8 billion people on the planet. You're not the smartest one. So be the fastest one, and you'll win.
Awesome. I love that. Okay, so we're going to take a couple questions from the audience. Hand raise one. If you have any more, throw your hands up. We'll call them in order. We'll do three. And then just name, intro, and question.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Michael. My name is Winton. I was born and raised in the Bay Area. Actually, I lived in New York and Brazil, so it feels like I was meant to be here today. But yeah, my question is more targeted towards Thiago, but anyone can answer this. Sort of a double-barreled question, and I hope this wasn't answered in any of the talk today. There's a lot of very powerful information here today, but how do you effectively pitch an idea that might not seem strong initially? Because, well, Nathan, you said every idea is probably going to be trash in the beginning, to a potential co-founder. I guess it's 3 questions. And then what's the best way to identify a co-founder who complements your skills? Should they bring something you lack? Should they be more aligned with what you already do? Or should you first determine which problem you can solve together? I don't know if you guys want to answer that first, and then maybe it's sort of double-barreled, but... And then how do you assess when you have enough expertise to pursue a startup solution? And how can you get that quick feedback? Because I feel like if you're asking someone if your idea is good, they might also be like, oh, it's great, but I'm not going to tell them that. I'm just going to take it and run with it. So that's something that I'm sure is a potential fear for people as well. So I hope that wasn't too many questions, but yeah.
Maybe you, given your YC background, because I think it's a lot of questions that YC.
Yeah. So, all right, I'll try to hit them all. If you're worried that someone's going to take your idea and run with it, then you're thinking about it the wrong way. Ideas are great and they're good, but you have to execute them. They're not really worth anything on their own. If you have an idea that you want to pitch a co-founder on and you're worried that your pitch is too weak, it's either the idea or it's you. But either way, you have to fix it, right? Like if you think it's a good idea and you can't pitch a good idea as a good idea, like figure out, is it actually a good idea or am I not able to communicate it well enough? And like either of those would be bad, but like you fix them differently. How to pick a co-founder. I knew my co-founder for 10 years. We are very much the same in a lot of ways, and then different in a few ways. I think the relationship is a lot more important than figuring out the skills. If you've got someone you think, this would be the most amazing co-founder, but this person and I, we kind of do the same things. I'm going to pick someone less good who has different skills than me. You're picking wrong. You pick on the relationship.
Yeah, and just adding on the co-founder and pitching the co-founder, if he's a good co-founder, he'll help you improve the idea, even if the pitch is not that great. So I would treat that more as a collaboration than a pitch.
I'll just add to that a tiny bit, which is I almost think if you are more aligned on the problem than the actual solution, that's going to give you more insight into whether or not this is the right person, because it's rarely about the exact specific solution and way more about the fundamental problem that's underneath it. And if you both share a passion for solving the problem, then you go about figuring out what the right solution is together.
But I'll reiterate, if you can't in one tweet effectively pitch your product, figure that out first, then do everything else.
One in the back. We'll go 1, 2, and then we'll wrap.
How do you know when you are ready to make the jump to actually start a company versus, maybe continuing to work and gain experience?
Oh, great question.
In my case, I said it was just gut feeling, and I didn't even know what I was going to do. I was just, at the same time, it got to a point where like everywhere I would go, it could be a restaurant, could be any place, I would be looking at, is this place making money? What's the revenue here? How many clients there are? It got kind of crazy. So it definitely, it was just something that I had to do. Although it's easier to say that after, I don't know, 15 years, 12 years, that I've made that decision. But back in the day, it felt the right thing to do. And again, I had the financial security. I had my wife supporting it, and she worked, and she said, like, I'm gonna be here helping you out. If things don't work, I'm here, don't worry. So that helped a lot as well.
There was a moment for me at Twitter where I remember waking up one day thinking to myself, if these people, not the word I used, but people can do this, I have to try. Now, I also, a couple years later, went back and was like, wow, I grossly underestimated how fucking hard this is. Respect. But in the moment, it really was like, if these, because I was watching terrible decisions getting made left and right. And I was like, but these are the people leading this like massive business? Okay, then I should try, right? Like worst case scenario, I fail, like you said. And I had a very similar moment where it was like, I know I will regret not trying. Like at the end of my life, I will look back and be like, really? You didn't try? Come on, man. That said, there's a lot of variables that go into making that decision, but I do think that there's a bit of a like, there's like an internal inertia that kind of shoves you that way, and if you pay attention to it, then you can really lean into it.
Yeah, it's a two-way door. Like you can try and be like, let's go back, right? So don't rage quit on your way out, but like you can change your mind. Like it's okay.
But at the same time, quit, right? So at least that was important for me. Like the fact that I quit my job was just like, okay, it would actually be impossible if because I see a lot of people doing that. Like, oh, I'm going to do this as a side job. I'm going to continue in my day job. That works for some people, but it requires so much intensity, so much of your time starting a company, that I feel that if you don't commit, you're putting yourself to fail.
Yeah, if you're going to try to do the impossible, don't half-ass it.
Hi, guys. My name is Maxim. First of all, great panel. Thank you so much. I'm originally from Russia. I used to work in corporate venture capital in the health tech space. Got fired, moved to Hawaii, decided to start a company. My question to you is, in the pre-revenue, very early stage of your business, when you have an idea that you believe in, how do you get other people to believe in you, and how can you get a team of fairly technical people to work for you with minimal to no pay?
Well, so I always try to figure out like what's the least you could do, right? I think a lot of people, especially probably in this room, are kind of hard-charging drivers. Like we see a problem, like there is nothing that can get in our way. We're going to tackle right through it, right? I think sometimes you have to stop. And I read this somewhere else. It's not mine, but I'd steal liberally. Is what would this look like if it were easy? Right? You think like, I have this huge mountain, like I'm going to charge up this thing. Like, all right, well, okay, that's hard. But what would it look like if it were easy? And that is a very difficult question. It's like that Peter Thiel, what do you believe that no one else believes? Like that's just very, very hard. It's a very simple but very hard thing. So I would first stop and ask myself like, okay, whatever this is I'm trying to do with my very good idea, like what's the least I could do? What would this look like if it were easy? And then, then all the other pieces start becoming easier. Like, how do I get, a whole bunch of engineers to work for me for free? It's like, well, if I do less and I kind of do this and kind of do that, then I don't need all those engineers anymore. So, I would look for that and figure out what is the least you could do. Because to have an idea and build it, and that idea is $1 billion company, it's like, nope. Like it doesn't really work. There's like one example I can think of, and that's Viva Pharmaceuticals is the only one that like works that way, right? And this guy was like, he had previously run, I don't know, SAP or something, and he's like, I'm just going to create this thing, and he was already like massively successful. But otherwise, you have to tackle it differently.
Awesome. So we have to wrap. Thank you. Mahalo. Valeu, obrigado. Let's give them a round of applause really quickly.